Hey everybody, welcome back again. In this episode, we're going to continue talking about web forms. And in the last episode, I talked about some stuff that basically is ready to go now. So this placeholder, autofocus, required autocomplete, you can start using those, and most modern browsers, will interpret those correctly. There are a couple that get a little more specific to certain browsers over others, and we'll talk about those because I think some of them are still useful. The first one to talk about, let's go back into our form, and I'm going to drop a line. And before we do anything, let's put these another input in here. And this time what I want to do is create an input, and this is going to be for like if you want to search for something on a website. So let's put the input, let's give it an ID equals the search. Spell it right though. And then what I'm going to do is for, let's give it a name. And typically, remember, we're going to send it a box with data in it. So we'll say the name equals search term. And so this will give let the browser know that there's going to be the search term in here, and it's going to process that, or excuse me, the server. And then what we'll do is go ahead and say in here for type, instead of saying equals text, I'm going to say type equals search. So we're going to talk about some other types for input tags here. Now if I come back over here and refresh, you can see that it put another tag in here, but one of the interesting things is notice that the edges are curved. It went ahead and did that for us. And then when I click inside this box and start typing, I am searching, you can notice that what it did is it put also a little X in here that I can click on to clear that box out. Now, unfortunately, this is really only available on WebKit browsers, and namely Safari. And the reason is that it's a Macintosh thing because it's consistent with the user interface just in the Mac OS X. So I think that's pretty interesting and worth noting. Now, if your browser, if you're on Windows on Firefox or Internet Explorer, it'll just treat this as a regular text box. You just won't notice the styling around it. Hopefully, as HTML5 becomes more accepted and more matured, that most browsers will start entering these capabilities. But unfortunately, these are kind of specific to certain browsers. So anyway, that is the search box. Before we get cooking any further in here, I'm going to add let's add a style in here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a couple here. Let's do one just because what you can see here is in the browser that these are inline. So all of the inputs and all the labels are inline, meaning there's no break between each one of them. What I'm going to do is just change the, for label, comma, input, I'm going to change the, display to be block instead of inline. And that will stack them on top of one another. And let's go ahead and for the label specifically, I'm going to give it a padding on the top of 25 pixels. Yeah, so that'll give us some spacing here too. So okay, so now we can get this a little cleaner and see what our form is doing. Okay, so let's go back over here. The next one I want to show you is one called that we can do is called it's called the data list. And let me show you how this works. What we can do, let's drop down to the bottom here, and let's say input. And then let's say ID equals planet. I don't know, we'll be goofy here. And we'll say name equals user planet. And we'll say the type equals text. And what we're going to do is do one more. It says list. And the list is going to equal to the planets. Like that. Let's self-close that. Now, this won't do anything right off the bat. In fact, if I go back and refresh, it just simply gave us another input field. Actually, let's do a label for that too. Let's go down here and say label. And we will say for planet, for equals planet. And we will go ahead and say enter your planet. This is really geeky, guys. Sorry. Label. And now you can see that, yes, we have instructed, so enter your planet. So you're not going to see anything there. But what this allows us to do is to, when I say this list equals, this kind of works like the for attribute in the label. And so what I would have after this is the data list. And we will give this an ID of, and it needs to match up with this list name, so the planets. So we will put the ID of the planets in there. And let's go ahead and close that out, data list. And we will go in here, and what we will do is put a series of options in here. So we'll say option, and we will say value equals, I don't know, Mars. Let's do another option. Option value equals Venus. And let's do one more for option value equals Earth. Okay, so what this is going to do is it kind of combines the drop-down list that you see in forms using option values. It's going to combine that with, because we've bound it to this input. So it combines these two elements together. Now, unfortunately, the only browser that this works in is Opera. So let's go ahead and open Opera here. I'll create a new page, and let's put that forms example in here. Now, when I say enter your planet, notice as soon as I clicked in that field there, it gave me a drop-down. So I can start typing Mars or whatever. I could type Neptune. And notice what's cool about this, or more specifically Pluto, since we know it's not actually a planet. It allows you to combine these two. So before, when you had a drop-down only, you had to use some fancy JavaScripts and stuff. So if the user needed to enter something that wasn't necessarily in that list, what this does is it combines them. It makes things easier. It also gives predictive spelling and stuff. So if I want to do Earth or something like that, I can see this right there and hit return. So those are some new things. Unfortunately, that only works in Opera. What happens is if I do try to do this in Safari, let's go back over to Safari and let's refresh the page. If I try to enter my planet and start typing, nothing happens. It's not the end of the world. It's no big deal. As you can see, it falls back gracefully. So if you're in a browser other than Opera, it won't work. But again, I'm showing this because I want, or my hope is that as HTML5 comes further along, that you'll be able to use this in multiple browsers, because I think particularly this one is very, very useful. There are other input types that we really haven't discussed yet. We can do things like dates, sliders, color pickers, things like that. And unfortunately, at this point, because the HTML5 spec is not complete, these will be great. I mean, having a color picker, if you want to select a background color for your web page or something like that, it's going to be great and easy to write. But unfortunately, right now, you've got to tie it in with a lot of JavaScript. So it's a little beyond what I want to talk about just for general form, material here. But you can at least know that it's there and that it's coming. One other thing that I want to show you here, and this is kind of specific here, but there is an example that I put. In fact, let me just show you what it is. One thing that I can do here is for the list attributes here. So we have, let's see, let's go back up here. Sorry, not the list, the type attributes. So like right here, we have type equals text. There's a couple others that HTML5, and I think these are important right now, and these are specifically email, URL, and telephone, TEL. And let me show you what this looks like. If I go to, I'm going to quit that out. I typed a little URL earlier that we can check out here. So let's go to classes.tedforbes.com/examples/input.html. And what you can see here is I've set up a form. We have your name, an email address, a URL, and here's a phone number. Let's view source so we can see what's going on here. And when I view the source, I can see that the first input here, the type is equal to text. The second one is going to be type equals email. The third is type equals URL. And the fourth is type equals tel. Now, this isn't extremely useful for traditional computers that browse websites because nothing happens in here. I just click and type. But what is cool, and what I'm going to do is let's go over to the iPhone simulator here real quick. And the iPhone simulator, if you're signed up as a developer on Apple, you can download the simulator. And what's really cool about this is the ability to not only test an app you might be writing, but I have that link pulled up in Safari. And what I want you to see is what happens here. Because I specified those input types as being different, when I click in here and say your name, you notice that the keyboard pops up on the iPhone. And there are a couple other smartphones that support this feature too, but you can see I get a standardized keyboard. Now watch this. When I click inside this phone number field, I got a different keyboard. Now we have a telephone number keypad. I get a different when we go into the URL example. I get the one with the .com button down here. If I go into the email one, I get the one with the @ in here. So this is really cool and very slick on Apple's part to have this written into the Safari mobile browser, because if you've ever typed on a mobile phone or you use a smartphone, you do know that there are different keyboards for different situations. So for instance, if I'm typing a telephone number, I don't want to use this keyboard because I have to go in here and type the number, and then I have to go around. The keys are smaller, whereas if I have the telephone button specified, I get a telephone numeric keypad. So this is really cool and really important. And as I said before, again, more of this will merge not only into all browsers, but like this example right here is excellent because it covers devices other than traditional computers, something that doesn't have a traditional keypad, something like that. So anyway, that's just a little bit of what you can kind of get a taste of here as far as where HTML5 is going with forms. So anyway, I'll see you guys in the next episode.